So while Joe is rounding people up, I'm going to tell everybody a joke. It's a good joke. It's not the best joke. It's not a good joke. Fine. See? Look at me lowering expectations.
Top of the stage.
That's how they tell us not to talk. So an older man goes to his doctor and says, doctor, I need some help. I'm having some toilet problems. The doctor says, well, are you able to urinate? And the man says, every morning, 7 a.m., just like a baby. Okay, all right. Well, that's not the problem then. Are you able to have a bowel movement? He says, yes, sir. Every morning, 8 a.m., just like clockwork. Every day, have a bowel movement. Doctor says, well, I'm having trouble seeing what the problem is. He says, doctor, I don't wake up till 9.
That's one you can tell your kids.
You can, and then they'll tell their friends, and then their teacher will talk to you about that. I've heard that's what happens.
So welcome. It's so good to have you here. And it's really the second event we've used this room for. We had Cindy's work party here about 3 weeks ago. So I'm the chair of the Utah Libertarian Party. We say it that way now because the Libertarian Party of Utah in Spanish abbreviates to LP UTAH, which, if you know Spanish, isn't a good thing. So we went with Utah Libertarian Party of Utah. Quite a little branding confusion on that. La Puta.
And we drive Chevy Novas to all the meetings.
We do. And we go to Osco Drugs. So all that American branding that they didn't really appear to me. By the way, that's my favorite spot in the theater. Boomer Shannon up there. He got Jeff Hewitt elected to that Riverside County. It was amazing. Back and forth on whether to put that window in up there or not, and this is the moment where I'm sure I did the right thing. Absolutely. Boomer, there's seats down here. There's even one of the giant reclining theatrical. Yeah, it opens, actually. Anyhow, welcome, and I mean that so sincerely. You helped make our house a home by your presence here, and we're blessed by the memories that we're creating tonight. This will be a night long remembered. Especially since I think Scott is live streaming it on the internet.
About to be. So mind your P's and Q's and your language.
Okay, cool. So
we know there's no bad language on the internet.
Right.
This is how that man got elected mayor of Bigwater, Utah.
Willie, we're either part of the solution or we're part of the problem.
And really, Jim, you don't need to stand. Unless you're okay standing though. You want to stand?
Oh, Jim will need to be down here in a moment.
No, they're going to bring you.
You've been a chair, you stand through the entire convention.
Yeah, you've been a chair long enough, now you want to stand, and then you learn not to become a chair again. We do have a little present for you. Also, I brought, in the spirit of Christmas, and I'm going through the house to declutter, we have various store prizes to be given away. Ideally for contributions to either the Libertarian Party of Utah or the National Party. So I'm prepared to give away an exciting 2008 Libertarian National Convention, a better choice for America. Convention bag. Now I have several thousand of these because I drove my RV over to Denver, and on the last day they were going to chuck them in a bin, and I said, no, I'll drive them back to Utah and give them away. So I thought it was about time I got around to doing that. So for anyone who would like to sign up for a lifetime membership in the Libertarian Party, Lauren will take your... Anyone who would like to give $1,000, $10 will give you this bag. Oh wait, it's got something in it.
Does it count if I'm giving to...
I play baseball.
Does it count if I'm already giving to...
Yes, that's right. You already got your $10 in, I heard.
Okay.
So we don't know why your credit card is getting charged. But
Every
my treasurer
month
tells me
I'm
right?
giving it,
Every
so-
month.
Oh, thank you.
So cheap.
Let's see.
Do you take Bitcoin?
Yes, absolutely.
If you will go to libertarianutah.org/donate,
Yes, you may give us money via Bitcoin.
Yes,
We
every
do
Libertarian
accept
Party should.
Bitcoin.
I think we accept Ethereum and I want to say Monero.
Whatever
Did you
BitPay
get one of
thinks.
these? Were you there?
Yes.
Anyone else like a bag? For any contribution at all, help me mow the lawn.
Here, I already have one.
Boomer's staying to do the dishes. There's a bag. Also, I was at some thing. I went to one of the premieres.
Oh, I gotta have one of those.
I actually drove from here to Westlake Village, California to see the opening night of Atlas Shrugged Part 1, which if you stay until 11 o'clock tonight, we'll fire up that projector and we can show you Atlas Shrugged Part 1.
It's on Netflix.
Who would like a Who is John Galt t-shirt?
Who is John Galt?
Oh, kind of 20 bucks, got me that. 20 bucks for a t-shirt. Anyone else?
What's else?
It's going into the chairman's personal fund. John Galt. Who hit the lights? The other one. There you go. By the way, hit the middle switch up there and let's turn on the sconces on the side. Because they're, I don't know.
There we go.
Well, that says extra large, but that looks like a kid's extra large.
It says extra large. Justin, can you hit that one again and turn on the main lights, or do we want just the sconces?
No,
We're going for mood lighting now?
I'm gonna lean on this wall.
Go lean
I'll
over
lean
Alright.
on this wall.
We also have a Freedom Fest bag to put your t-shirt in, so you get a bag with every t-shirt.
I've already gotten a free.
And of course, your Gary Johnson Live Free 2012 shirt.
I have about 400 of them, and I'll give them 20 bucks for one more. I didn't have the entire thing for it.
Second best comedian in the Libertarian Party after all. So Cindy and I also volunteer at the Sundance Film Festival and collect a lot of cherished possessions from there. This is an HBO documentary films nightcap.
So, considering we're selling swag, I might as well interject
All right,
here.
I'll go to. By the way, I'm going to stop there.
for
I'm gonna
a
stop.
Utah Libertarian Party t-shirt.
$15 will get you a t-shirt. I'm giving away t-shirts for Who is John Galt for free.
You have a 2X or 3X, I will give you 20.
Nobody needs a
Absolutely.
hat.
We got him.
We have a whole box upstairs. We finally got a box of t-shirts.
And my money's in
All
the
right, I'm saving the best one for last.
And Justin, my wallet's in the car.
I saw this and I thought of you, and I knew this moment
We're
would
not throwing them right
arrive,
now.
where I could offer for a donation to the Libertarian Party of Utah
Oh my God.
an unautographed
Whoa,
copy
whoa.
of Millionaire Republican by Wayne Allen Root.
Sorry, I had to move somewhat away from that book.
Joe, is the lighter still upstairs?
Don't step on the punchline. So, at the conclusion of the evening, we'll gather around the fireplace in the living room, where we'll give a lighter and a $50. $50 We got a gas starter up there. We can really fire that sucker up too. So the opening bid is $50. We're going to keep this on the table through the festivities for evening, which will now proceed to my communications director, Mr. Justin Bake.
I'm Justin Bake. I'm the Candidate Resource Director for the Libertarian Party of Utah. The reason for this party tonight is this is our 2019 goal
Sorry,
operation.
with the Utah Libertarian Party, not the Libertarian Party of Utah.
Okay.
Fair enough. Utah Libertarian Party. I'm the one that made that. I made that point too. I was the one that said we need to redo this logo because our old logo, no offense, was a little dated. It was great for the 90s though. It was great for the 90s. Sorry, I had to call you out there. So this is our new logo. We've redone a lot of our branding to modernize our branding over the last year, and we've learned some great things in 2018. We've learned a lot, actually.
Porcupines like honey, I think was the main thing.
Porcupines live in beehives.
Yeah, porcupines live in beehives, that was the main thing. So tonight is our 2019 Operation Gold Rush dinner. What we've noticed is Libertarians have a hard time winning partisan races. And that's just because people get so locked into the Democrats and the Republicans, and they think there's only two options. Well, what we want to do tonight is kick off our 2019 runs for municipal elections, which are nonpartisan. But the nice thing about the Libertarian Party is that we're both a party and a philosophy. We're a philosophy of liberty. So we can push money to whatever candidate we feel like. Unfortunately, won't happen at convention as much. But we have 6 candidates that are credible that want to run for city council. And that, in the long term, will help us.
Well, yeah, that's just
Yeah, there's
starting. That's
more
just
than
already
that.
signed
That's
up.
6 that I know absolutely are going to do it. There's more than that. But
And the reason we asked you all here tonight.
yeah, the reason we're not here tonight. So that's what we're doing here tonight. We're getting ready for 2019, and this is a long game plan. You know, a lot of the gripe that libertarians get when running for office is you have no credible experience. By getting people into these lower offices, these city council positions, these city mayor positions, planning boards, doesn't matter. We give those candidates credibility, so when they want to run for the House, the Senate, the governor, the president, whatever it may be, hopefully they take a couple steps to president. Just saying. But whatever it may be, they have a credible record, a credible voting record to go off of and say to their constituents or potential constituents, this is what we want to do. So, you know, that's why we're here tonight, and we're really hoping to have a gold rush in 2019.
You ready to do some?
Nick Sarwark, our national chair, is here, and he'll be speaking with you. There will be questions. So
Why did you tell the people in the first class dining area? We
Most
didn't get to hear.
can't tell you that. That's secret.
It's $100
Between me and Bethany.
For $100, we can find out.
First, I want to say thank you to Joe and Cindy
And Anna.
and Anna. Well, they did all the work. Joe mostly walked around. Did everyone try the veal? So thank you for opening your home to us. That is above and beyond what is required or necessary. It's that kind of commitment to the party from you and from so many people in this party that has kept us going for as long as we've been going and kept us growing for as long as we've been growing. This is a tough fight that we are in, and if we're not in it together, it's very easy to be discouraged. And so I want to thank all of you for coming out and not being discouraged, for actually being excited and optimistic about the opportunities that we have to really change the direction of the city, the county, the state, and the country. And eventually the world, but you know, we'll get there, and it's next year. What the Utah Party is doing is similar to what a lot of the state and local libertarian parties are doing around the country. We have realized that there's lower resistance to people voting for a libertarian in a nonpartisan race, or a more local race, even if it's partisan, than maybe president. That we were talking about at the table. You know, when we run a presidential candidate, they get a couple percent, but they may bump up the percentages of the people who are at the lower level because a lot of voters are looking at it and going, yeah, I like Gary Johnson, he's really cool, but you know, I'm scared. But I'm going to vote for these other libertarians because they're kind of like Gary Johnson, so their vote totals all go up. What we've seen is we actually have answers for some of those local issues that none of the other parties have. You know, everybody around the country recognizes that most local governments and state governments are spending more money than they take in, and it's unsustainable, and it's going to bankrupt our children and our grandchildren. I don't think you find any disagreement on that problem with 95% of the people, regardless of party affiliation, political, not political. Everybody knows it's a problem. The problem is, and the solution is, that of all those people around the country who recognize that problem, only a handful, like Jeff Hewitt here, newly elected District 5 Supervisor of Riverside County, actually has started solving the problem by taking his city of Calamasa, realizing that the large state fire department service is way more expensive and doesn't provide what his city needs, and thinking outside the box, starting his own fire department at a much lower cost with a much better quality of service without the onerous pension obligations that the other larger jurisdiction has. He's actually solving the problem. And libertarians around the country are going out into their communities and saying, we have solutions to these problems. where we're the only candidates who are going to stop spending more money than we actually take in. We're the only candidates that are going to say your local government should only do the things that you really want it to do and shouldn't go buy a hotel, for example, or have some inflated contract with the city council member's brother because happens, or a parks department contract where you have government unionized plumbers who come around twice a year, $10,000 per visit, and the park sewers still don't work. These are the opportunities we have. And it's a way for us to go out and show people what it's like to be a libertarian, show people what our values are instead of just talking about it. And that can be the springboard to them being comfortable that that libertarian guy in the county supervisor board is not so bad. He works well with others, he doesn't, make off-color jokes, and he really does show what libertarianism is all about. And that builds up into those on-year elections, the 2020 elections, the 2022 elections, where we can do better in the partisan races. And it's a virtuous cycle where more and more of our friends and neighbors want to be part of this group that is more than just a political party. It's more akin to a family or a community of people who really care about their neighbors and their children and their grandchildren, and they want something better for their city and their county, their state, and their country. And so what the Utah Party is doing dovetails very well with what the National Party is doing. We've set a goal to run over 200 local candidates around the country in 2019 because, like in sports, championships are won in the off-season, and 2019 is the off-season. It's the time where we build capabilities, we build out customer relationship management software, we build out voter databases, we do the things that are necessary to win when we get to 2020. So I hope that you all consider running for office at the local level. I did it. It's a lot of fun. And 40,000 of my neighbors seem to think that I was pretty good at doing it. Not quite enough, I'm not. As opposed to Jeff, I gave him the oath. I didn't take any oath, but it's something, and that builds on itself. And what it's resulted in is the people who ran against me are now taking those ideas about having the city not waste money on things that they shouldn't do, about not subsidizing sports team owners. Those ideas are being implemented without me having to have a government job. And so I think it's win-win for all of us. So with that, I would like to, with Joe's indulgence, bring up newly elected County Supervisor Jeff Hewitt from Riverside County, California, to say whatever it is he wants to say.
Whatever it is Boomer wants him to
And
say.
his chief of
apparently.
staff, hopefully, helping him. Every successful politician has a handler. I now have several. My original handler was my wife. I now have several wives.
Wait, we're in Utah. Bigwater was a polygamous hotspot.
One more bad joke. She has to cover her ears.
Cover your ears.
The art of communication is really a strange art. Years ago, when I was digging all these pools, thousands and thousands of pools, I had mostly Hispanic workers, and I was pretty confident in my own Spanish. And it was high stress day, we were behind, we had 5 jobs going, and I came to this one crew and I looked at it and looked at the plan, and I could see that they laid the pool out way too small. So I was furious. It was an easy layout and they made it too small. We went from a 1/8 inch scale to a full scale, and I started yelling at them. I said, ¿Qué está haciendo? Esta vega es demasiado pequeña. Necesito hacer más grande. I was thinking that I was saying, this pool is too small. We have to make it bigger. You see, the word for pool in Spanish is alberca. the word for the male organ is bedroom. And in my haste, because I was so mad, I was sitting there telling them, your is too small and you need to make it bigger. And the more they laughed at me, the more infuriated I got, and the more I told them to make their bigger. Eventually, one of the crew leaders came over, took me aside, explained it to me, and then I laughed. But from that day on, I called, there is fortunately another word in Spanish for pool, and it's piscina. So I went with piscina from then on. I think we as libertarians do that a lot. We don't necessarily do it in Spanish. We do it in English. What do people want? People want to be respected. They want politicians that reflect their values. They want them to go out and work hard for them. They don't want them to create pixie dust or perform miracles. They don't want that. They just want us to be honest, hard workers. And people say that all these studies show that as many as 30% of the people in the United States are libertarians. I would venture to guess that when really get down to it and do some real objective polling, as many as 60 or 70% are. So why are we where we're at today? I'll tell you one thing. Can someone who's in a nonpartisan office, who's a real libertarian, whose goal is to attain less government and more personal freedom, are they just as effective as someone who runs in an office that they've been branded a libertarian? As far as governing, they're just as effective. As far as attracting other people to the party, they're not. So we've got two fronts to work on. We're still a very, very small party. You know, we are comprised of about 1% of the registered voters. We got as many as 3% in our last presidential election when both other parties had horrible candidates. The candidates like Bethany, right up here, showed that the latter can happen. We're there. What she does, it's a technicality. She didn't show the libertarian. We know a libertarian can win with that L behind her. But it's in a race where we know we can get the message out. In my race, I'm getting a little bit of secondary because the papers are, and having luminaries like Nick come out there and swear me in instead of just a regular judge. Oh, and by the way...
Where the hell is Judge Gray?
Well, he's in Hawaii, but listen, hey, I'll tell you what. The judge, the other two members that got sworn in, both had judges, and the judge told him, because I made a joke, I said, oh, I only have a lawyer, and she basically said, oh, he'll be a judge. We can get all kinds of press. What we want is we want positive press that show we're effective. We don't want to lose our edge. We already have the edge. We've got the best radicals. We've got the best ideas. We've got the most colorful people. Can you say Star Child? I mean, we have
outshine Star Child.
Well, I'm saving really for the end.
Contest.
I'm
putting my money here.
But the point I'm saying is that we've got this all in our hands. And as a libertarian for all my life, as an adult, I decided to get involved in the party about 5 years ago when I ran for an office that was partisan. And even though I only got 6.4% of the vote in running for a state legislative office, and I raised $18,000, which is a lot for a libertarian, but it's not anywhere close to beating someone that has $400,000 in one of the major parties, I learned that this was my party. And I watched and I watched and I watched, and I was tired of not having the ability to change policy. Because I had been elected for like 3 years at that time in a city council, and I knew how much power elected people have. But I also knew that this is a marathon, not a sprint. Between my planning commission and my time on a city council, this is a 14-year journey. And sometimes it's best just to be quiet and listen. Sometimes it's just listen to your colleagues. Find out which ones are crazy and which ones are kind of, you might make a connection with. And build up a relationship. And pretty soon, they will all commit political suicide, go against Big Fire, and pull off something that no other elected in my entire region thought was possible. Now that I'm in a very, very powerful political position, I've got an advantage on everybody else. First of all the other supervisors endorsed my opponent. So I don't have any favorites. And another thing, almost none of them know what a libertarian is. So they don't know what to expect. But I got to tell you this. Now this is the best thing I heard. My oldest daughter's best friend is very high up in HR in the county that I have become a supervisor for. 22,000 employees. It's a big county. And she said that after it was certified, we had 2 new county supervisors. There was a woman named Karen Spiegel that had been the mayor of Corona, a city of about 200,000 people. And they said, oh, Karen, she's been mayor for several years. She's been on the council for 22 years. And she's a Republican, and she's conservative. And then they said, and then there's Jeff Hewitt. He's a libertarian. And the National Party is backing him. And he has higher aspirations. It was hilarious. If they knew how small we are. But remember, in politics, perception is everything. So we're going to get a lot of mileage out of this, but what I'm going to promise to do, not only for the party, but certainly the most important, the constituents that elected me, is to try to bring libertarian values and try to persuade my fellow board members that these values really do serve their constituents the best. And over the next 4 years, if I can move the needle a little bit, if I can inspire other people to say, hey, come on over, that's all right, we'll give you a hand. And if you really, really, really need a hand, we'll loan you Boomer Shannon. Because Boomer Shannon, if he can get me elected, and he's having, there's Republicans and Democrats alike that are highly elected right now, and they're worried about their reelection, and they're asking if they can borrow Boomer. That's the case of it. Political success depends on really one thing. And that one thing is derived from me after digging thousands and thousands of swimming pools, of which each one I moved between 100 and 300 ton of dirt from somebody's backyard to somewhere else. And not one of those got done by themselves. Not one of those yards moved because I was a libertarian. They all moved by hard sweat and work. And don't ever, ever think that you're going to go out there and go, I don't want them to think I'm desperate or something. No, when you're running for office, you're desperate for votes. They want you to get out there, press their flesh, say something to them, be out there, say, here's what I'm about, and here's why I'm going to make your lives better. And at the end of the day, when they go in, they go, oh shit, the guy tried. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. If you go ahead and line up and then get a guy like Boomer on there, and then with that, money. For every voter, you need a donor. And talk about it. Find a race that you know what it's going to take. What historically has to be raised? Is it a partisan one? She can win partisan races if they're a certain size. Pick those races, get experienced, because watch out, you might get elected. And that's when the hard work begins. So with that, I would hope that everybody here in Utah, you got a great state. You got one of the most libertarian states of all. I've got doubts on the new logo. No.
You're not alone.
Sorry, Justin. No, but you know, this party deserves to start winning. They really do. We are the best people. We're the ones that get it. We're the ones that have been ridiculed. It's time that we take over the world and start letting people live their own lives. Thank you.
Everybody here loves you and nobody's met you.
So,
I was just introducing Bethany.
so Bethany Baldus came all the way from Riverton, Wyoming.
Yay.
Today.
Bethany Baldus unseated the Speaker of the Wyoming State House.
He did that himself.
Well, she helped quite a bit, and for a solid 45 minutes, Bethany Baldus was elected as a Libertarian to the Wyoming State House until her opponent found 500 votes.
He might have been in Mexico when that happened. We don't know where he was.
Somebody found 500 votes for her opponent, which just happened to be just enough that there wasn't an automatic recount, and then she didn't win. I'm not saying that there's cheating in Wyoming, but I am saying that I'm very proud to introduce to you Bethany Baldus.
Bravo!
So since the story got brought up, you know, it's funny, my husband and I talk a lot about that night because that night was epic. Like, it was my dad, I'm a second generation libertarian. My dad had tears in his eyes. I talked to my mom later about it. She says, the only time I've ever seen those tears is when you and your brother were born. It was a really big deal for my dad and the other people in my community who've been in the Wyoming Libertarian Party for a while. But you know, what I learned in those 45 minutes, I get to take with me. So not everybody gets to practice winning, but I got to practice for 45 minutes how to win. And next time, it's not going to be a close race. I'm going to beat him out of the water. And it gave us the motivation to keep on going. It wasn't a close race for me. It was a win for me. So now I look at it, and this is something that everybody can take for advice. So how do I make myself better so that in 2020, nobody has doubts about who to vote for? And it's all about community involvement. That's what I started last year, and for the next 2 years, I continue. So if you're looking at running for office, the things you do is you look when committees are looking for members, you look for when boards need people, you look at your community, because all of our communities need some help. I don't care if you're in Wyoming, I don't care if you're in Utah, I don't care where you're at. Our communities need our voices. So you get involved. What happens when you get involved is you meet people. What happens when you get involved, you find out what the real true issues are. One of the big issues going on in Riverton is we have a private hospital within, 2 hospitals within 30 miles of each other, and the federal government gives incentives for if there's only one. So for a town of 10,000 people, we have no OB. So you have to drive 30 miles or 45 miles to have a baby. These are issues to be on the ground floor of. So I'm on that committee. Like, just find the issues. Find the things where your town can look at you in 2 years. This is what I want to do. And if you don't want to run for office, find candidates that you can back up and be there for. Because I could not have done this without Apollo. I could not have done this without any of my volunteers. Every single one of them became family to, you stop it, to my family, to the point that my kids 2 months later are still calling Apollo's cousin Michael, like, on a weekly basis. But the thing is that, I'll make it short because Apollo's going to get me a mess up here, but I think that it's so important that people realize that it's not just a Republican-Democrat party out there. We have people who are intelligent, who are capable, who who are qualified. My dad, you my dad gotta meet someday. He talks about all the time how if calluses were the ones that were in Washington, D.C., calloused hands were the ones in Washington, D.C., we would not be in debt like we are right now. And that is what is gonna matter. So.
We're talking a lot about community, from our community to yours.
Oh, thank you. And you guys have a Riverton, so it's kind of the same thing.
That's
You gonna hold it together? All right. So once he composes himself, so little known fact, the National Party wanted to do more about recruiting and supporting candidates. And so we put out a job posting for a campaigns and candidate support person. We wanted to make that a position that the National Party would fund and support to support candidates around the country and increase our chances of winning elections. And we had hundreds of people apply. We did interviews with, I think, over 50 people. And I made the executive decision that we had candidates that were so good in different areas that I just hired 2 people instead of 1 because it's the kind of thing I do. But one of them who impressed me with his ability to understand the political landscape, to be able to do the nuts and bolts on the ground stuff with the experience and the strategic instincts to really help our candidates get to the next level, that we brought on to look at strategic opportunities, places where either financially or demographically or just the general culture of the area, there were places where we could overperform. Identify those races and really support them whole hog. Apollo Pizzell was the person who stood out there, and with that, I would like to bring him up.
I appreciate it. First, I want to introduce myself because I am very proud of this. I was elected to the City Council of one of our local communities here, Copperton City, which is in this town. Since being elected, I've been able to achieve some very libertarian things, in my opinion. We have eliminated business licenses. It was a challenge. It was very difficult. We now have a business registry, which I argued with the name, but I can deal with business registry. It's now free, and all you have to do is once every 3 years, just say you're still doing business in the city. That's it. There's no taxes involved. That was number 1. Number 2, we were able to, I have since being elected, yesterday was my swearing in annual 1 year after being sworn in. And in 1 year, I was faced with 8 tax increases. 8. I was able to vote against all of them, which I was very proud of. And we were able to vote as a community council against 4 of them. So I want to be we're going to have their convention, the Utah Convention. So if you want to come, the Utah Libertarian Party Convention will be held in Copperton, in an area that we've been able to eliminate a lot. So
April 20.
420.
420.
Where else would we go and when else would we be there?
That was not my intention, by the way. I promise. We also were able to, we can do that without doing a mass gathering permit. I'll be having a fundraiser for my re-election campaign, which will be serving alcohol because we eliminated mass gathering permits in our city as well. So since for 1 year we've eliminated business permits, mass gathering permits, and I attempted to eliminate all ordinances, but I was sued by the state of Utah. So.
Now you're doing something right.
But big picture, I want to talk about what we were able to do with the National Libertarian Party. I worked for a lot of campaigns. When I was 18 years old, I'm afraid to say this, don't throw stones.
I've forgiven you for it.
When I was 18 years old, I grew up poor, and I worked for a Democrat, very popular Democrat. The wife of the governor of Arkansas, the former governor of Arkansas. In 2008, I nominated then Senator Hillary Clinton for president. Okay.
You're one of 3 people to do that.
I seconded your nomination after Dolores Huerta, who was a founder of the Farmers Union in California.
And you were 17.
I was 17 years old. So I've grown a lot.
It's on YouTube. Everybody in here should go, well, I could fire it up right now.
Yeah, well,
Put a pin in that.
yeah. I didn't feel home. I didn't feel home as a Democrat. I didn't feel at home at all. I never felt home. And so I contacted a state senator named Chris Butters, who I still consider a friend. And I worked for his campaign, and I worked for Republicans, but I still didn't feel at home. I never felt at home. And then I found the Libertarian Party, where I could believe that individual liberty and economic liberty were the most important parts of who we are, and it matters a lot. And we need to get people elected who believe in that value. I grew up in Utah. I was going to go over there. And Utah is a place that values individual liberty and economic freedom, and we need to do that more. Now, when I was hired by the National Party, I was incredibly pleased. And when I was able to help my friend and the daughter of my friend, Bethany Baldus, get 49.1% of the vote, the highest. We broke records for a partisan election. Okay, the next highest was 38% with Andre Maru in Alaska. We broke records for the highest percentage gained by a partisan libertarian running for State House. And I was incredibly proud of both her and our team. And we can do it, because this is about liberty. And that's why I'm here supporting my friend, the chair, Joe Buckman, and I want your help. So what we need to do is you need to donate to your national party, you need to donate to your local candidates, like Jeff Hewitt and Bethany Baldus, and you need to donate to your state, I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional. You donate to your state parties. So I'm asking you to do that today. Donate as monthly donors to your state party, your national party, and your candidates, and help them win so that liberty can advance, because that's what matters. Your families matter, your individuality matters, and emergency actions, they don't matter. So, thank you very much. And hi.
Yeah, so any comic will tell you the worst thing to do is go on after a really good act. So what I'm going to say is, again, thank you all for coming out tonight. Thank you for being a part of this, not just party or movement, but really a part of this family. If you do feel that you are able to and want to see this move farther and faster than it has been, if you want to take that next step, if you want to run for office, please do. Because the most important libertarian that anyone's going to see in their community is not me. It's not Apollo, it's not Jeff. It's definitely not Jeff. It's you. You're the one that your friends and neighbors know. You're the one that they trust. You're the one that if you're the one who has the libertarian after the name, they'll believe you because they know you. So go out there and step up. Make sure that your friends and neighbors have an option. And if you can, please support the national and the state parties financially. Because what we are planning to do at the national level, and I know at the Utah level, is take every dollar that you give and put it into putting more candidates on more ballots, putting more city council members on more city councils, defeating more tax increases, and showing people what this is all about and really changing this country for the better. So with that, thank you so much. And please see me or Lauren if you'd like to give to the National Party. Please see Joe or Justin if you'd like to give to the Utah Party. Please see any of the candidates that you've seen in the room if you'd like to give to them. But I just want to say thank you. A Q&A with me and Lauren?
The Q&A with
Yeah, if you want.
Lauren, come on up. We'll do Q&A.
We'll be in here till the last person leaves. And then
It's good you live here.
Also, I wanted everyone to be aware that someone I debated 5 times in 2017, and have learned to respect, and who I believe has brought some libertarian values to his service in the United States Congress. Congressman John Curtis will be one of our featured speakers in Copperton on April 20th. He's accepted my invitation to be there.
So be polite.
And,
Sure.
And be polite.
if the National Party could invite Warren Hatch in 1993 to speak to them, then we can do, was that awful? Bully was there. Yeah, does anyone have any questions for Nicolas?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
How many candidates did we have nationwide for 2018?
We had 846? 843, which was 40% more than we had in 2016, which was a presidential year. We did not meet my goal of having 2,000, but I'm bad at setting goals, I guess. Yes.
Actually, yeah, I had a question. What convenient. One of the things that I love that what Apollo and Joe have said, and you've said about donating monthly, so the budget, people can have a budget to plan things. But also there may be writers or graphic artists or people with other talents. What other, I mean, that would be, how would they get in touch with you or the state party to volunteer their skills?
Yeah, so if you want to help, and oftentimes your time can be more valuable than your money, especially if you have a particular talent, contact either your state chair or me, the national chair. I think, is it chair at libertarianutah.org?
It is. We want a libertarian Utah.
Yeah, and so it's chair at lp.org for me. And if I'm not the right person to talk to, then I can definitely put you in touch with the right people. But that kind of assistance, when we recruited candidates in Colorado, we recruited a full slate of candidates. We tried to contest every single state house election in, I think that was 2012. And we ended up contesting 80 out of 100 of those seats. What we did was we would say, will you run for office? We'd call people. I mean, it was straight up phone banking. None of this stuff is rocket science. Call them up, hey Joe, no one's running in district, whatever district you live in, will you do it? And Joe would say, no, of course I won't do it. I mean, Joe wouldn't, but other people would. And you would say, well, that's great, I understand, not a lot of talking to people, maybe you don't like that, that's cool. You know, a lot of our candidates need help filing campaign finance reports. They need a treasurer who can, you know, keep the numbers straight, keep everybody out of jail. Would you be willing to do that if I can find somebody who will run in your district? And maybe Joe says yes. In which case, that's perfect, because then that candidate now has at least one member of their campaign staff. They're starting off in a better place, and that person gets to help even if it's not in the way that, you know, they don't want to be the one shaking hands. Maybe he says no. And you say, oh, that's cool too. Not everybody likes numbers or the threat of going to jail. But let me ask you this. If I get a candidate who runs in your district and I get a treasurer who's going to keep him out of jail, are you good for $100 towards his campaign? Just to give the treasurer something to do. And oftentimes at that point, there's a guilt factor. Of course they're going to give $100. And that is the way that you kind of build the team up. And you're constantly looking to see, what can I do to make this better? You know, a lot of people, there's a phrase that I can only do so much. And it's true, but take the only out. You can do so much. Anything you can do to help will be helpful. And our candidates and our activists appreciate any volunteer help that they can get. Our social media team and our graphic design team is primarily made up of volunteers. Most of the really good work that we see is people who want to help in their own way with their own special talents.
You can also email info@lp.org. And staff responds to that on a daily basis. His email, I'm sure, gets quite busy. So that's another way to reach us if you need.
Been known to happen.
Work
Nice.
all right.
Yes.
So I know you're not going to get on the phone bank from Massachusetts because of the lost cause. However,
It's never a lost
No.
cause.
Sorry.
Anyway, sorry.
we
I will not step on your question. Go ahead.
you already did.
I'll stop stepping on your question very soon.
We have a really solid guy as our new political director. It's Mark Mercier, who was our second candidate in Massachusetts. We had two candidates.
He ran for, was Mercy
Ran
or
for
Congress?
Governor's Council.
Governor's Council.
But he's a really solid guy. He got himself on the ballot. It was 1,000 signatures required, and he did it. And he did some good campaigning and didn't win. But what can LP staff, how can LP staff help Massachusetts?
He's a political director, you said?
Yeah.
Okay,
Kara Schultz.
Yeah, Kara.
Sorry.
Kara is working actively to reach out to political directors in every state.
Yeah.
So if you can contact her and give her his contact info,
Okay.
that's the best step.
Oh, right. Thank you.
Yes.
Ms. Schultz is setting up a bunch of online trainings right now that you can visit. Actually, I will be doing one next week on campaign research, SWOT analysis, and background checks for campaigns. You guys can find that on Facebook. I am one of many that she's done in the past and many more that she has coming up. So when you ask what your political director can do, he can take his folks and direct them to those kinds of trainings, because I live in California. If you live in Massachusetts, it's much easier for me to get on Facebook or on Skype or on, I think we're doing Venmo or
Zoom.
Probably Zoom, yeah.
I'm big on Zoom now.
We're using Zoom so that we'll be able to talk. I know that we've already got like 50 people that are going to be showing up to that thing. So please
Awesome.
let him know what's going on with that,
We
and
do.
that she's doing a great job at that. So great way to go, Carl.
And if we have the financial support this year, we are planning to do regional trainings around the country that will bring people in face to face to get training on how to be better activists and be better candidates, to kind of build our bench. You know, there's a lot of people I know that came out of the Hewitt campaign. There are people who came out of my campaign for mayor. There are people who came out of Lauren's campaign for Justice of the Peace or the Baldus campaign, who are now at that next level and ready to go do better things the next round. So one of the things that is very important for especially a smaller party like ours is it's mostly about not going backwards. You know, we want to maintain the gains we have, and maybe we get hit by a blue wave this election, but we're not losing traction. We're going to keep moving forward, rather than have this cycle of up and down and up and down. We're going to just steadily improve. So Kara Schultz is the person. Other questions? Yes, Mr. Hewitt.
With all the excitement that we had back in 2016, with real big credible candidates for president, stuff like that, coming up now we look like there's going to be 30 or 40 Democrats to challenge Trump and such like that. You know, can you give us a little bit update on where we're at on ballot access and your thoughts about how exciting this, presidential campaign may be with our party, where we could build on that excitement from last time?
I'll take ballot access and you
Go
do
ahead.
presidential. We currently have ballot access in 33 states plus DC, so 34. For perspective, 20 years ago, we had 17 at this stage in the cycle, so that shows you how far we've come. This is the furthest along that spectrum that we've ever been at this stage. So we're working to close the gap with the remaining to get 50 state ballot access for our nominee. And to do that, we need to achieve ballot access in Alaska and Arkansas this year, and then the others hit next year. So we're on track for that. But this is just one of the many things, and I wanted to mention this earlier. When we ask for money for the national party, and you give money to us, this is what you're funding. You're funding the ballot access in Alaska and Arkansas, so we can go for the 50 state ballot access. Or you're funding Kara Schultz's time and talent to arrange all these great seminars. You're making that happen when you give to the national party. But Nick, you want to comment on the candidates?
I mean, just to follow up on a little bit on what Lauren said, this is the most efficient political investment that you can make, is into the Libertarian Party, both for scale reasons and just general overall commitment to doing the work. Pretty much all of that money gets force multiplied into a lot more for your dollar than it would in another political party. Not that you'd want to support another political party, but just from an ROI perspective. Our ballot access position in December of 2018 is the best ballot access position that any third party has been in the country in history.
No, since 1914.
Oh, sorry, since 1914, was it the socialists before that?
Something like that.
Since 1914. In 100 years, this is the best. And that dovetails into presidential nominees. So we have a very open process. Our party chairs don't have to not be able to run their own convention because they're being kicked out for rigging the election for the lady that used to be married to the governor of Arkansas. Still married to the former governor of Arkansas. One of those things that changed. We have a very open process. Anybody can seek our nomination, and my phone is available to anybody who wants to seek our nomination. I'll give advice to anybody. I'll tell them how to do it. I'll even tell them how to best position themselves. What I won't do is ever put my finger on the scale. What I have learned over the last 20 years of being involved in the Libertarian Party is we can all sit around over dinner and talk about who we would like to have be the Libertarian presidential nominee. And there's a few names that always pop up. I'd like this person to be. That is fun over dinner. But the only thing we can do is make our vehicle for a presidential candidate as attractive and fast as possible. So, it's not about us recruiting a particular person. It's about us making sure that we stay on track to have 50 state plus the District of Columbia full ballot access where every American can vote for the Libertarian, so that we have it be the shiniest prize that's available, especially if you are, for example, an anti-war Democrat who doesn't want to go into a field of 30 other people trying for a nomination. There's another party that's going to have 50 state ballot access that shares a lot of your values. Or if you are a conservative who doesn't want to spend more money than the government takes in and realize that the Republican Party has literally no interest in cutting spending and hasn't for at least 20 years, there's another party that shares a lot of your values that has 50 state ballot access. So I anticipate we're going to get a lot of big names coming to the convention in Austin in 2020. And all I can do is make sure that we stay on track to have the shiniest vehicle for them and be a ref and make sure that everybody plays fair, nobody cheats, nobody puts their thumb on the scale, and we come out swinging.
How do we determine how many delegates Utah gets to?
So it's a complicated mathematical formula because it was developed by libertarians. But most of it, about 80% of delegate allocation, is determined by the percentage of national sustaining members you have. So if you would like to increase Utah's representation at the 2020 convention in Austin, encourage all of your friends and neighbors to not only support the Utah party, but give at least $25 to the national party to become sustaining members. And that will help increase your delegate allocation at convention.
By the deadline, which is October.
By the deadline, which is October of
31st, 2019.
October 31st of this year. Mr. Carlin.
Yes, you just touched on the subject. Over the years, I've seen instances of national party sustaining membership declining, and it gets replaced by new people. How are we doing about recovering past libertarians?
May I answer part?
Go ahead.
We are trying many new things at headquarters. We're experimenting with new outreach online, through the mail, all sorts of different avenues. I'll give you an example. So our direct mail traditionally we've been sending the same letter to a huge list of, say, 20,000 people. I'm working to do more nuanced mailings. We have data going back, for years and years of people who have not renewed. And when the sex workers plank was passed at the convention this summer, I thought, okay, I'm not going to mail that out to everybody, but I can see how this might really appeal to some folks. So how do I, with the data that I have, how do I reach out to demographics that might be really happy that we have this new platform plank? So we crafted a letter. We sent it out to libertarians who had given for 5 consecutive years. And this included people who had lapsed a long time ago. Off of that letter, we had about 20 people who had lapsed as long ago as 20 years ago come back and start giving. Some of them very, very generously because they were excited to see this more edgy stuff from the National Party. And so we're looking for creative ways like that to reach out to people and show them, hey, here's what we're doing now if they want to get re-involved. And I see lots of progress on that personally. Nick?
Yeah, no, it's a matter of asking people. I mean, what happens is people drift away, and if nobody says, hey, I didn't see you, or, you know, we don't know why you're not here anymore, or why did you stop giving to us? No one ever asks, then they go away. And so some of them you'll never get back because they drifted off into the winds, can't find their address or whatever. We're trying to be better about being responsive to people to lower the amount of attrition we have. There's a natural attrition in any membership organization. And frankly, the younger generations are not as big of joiners. So membership, like having a card-carrying member, doesn't mean as much anymore. But what we're also trying to do is spur engagement at that lower end of the funnel, or sorry, upper end of the funnel, where you can sign a petition, or you can get involved in a volunteer thing, or you can volunteer with a candidate, so you get some interaction with the party, and then follow that up by reaching out to those prospects with something very specific for them to get them to that next level and get them to that next level.
We're also working to improve our customer service and just the quality presentation people see when they interact with the National Party. And so, for example, I mentioned the info@lp.org email address. There have been times in our past when people would email that and not get responded to. Now they get responded to very, very promptly and with a meaningful response that really answers their question. And that kind of thing is bringing people back and making them proud of the National Party. So I hear on a regular basis, oh my gosh, I'm proud of you guys for this mandate looks so good and professional. And I say, yes, you should see what the Democrats are sending out. We look at their stuff. It is. It truly is. And we look at their stuff on a regular basis and compare it to ours, and ours looks good, and it's quality stuff. And I think that helps bring in the newer, younger folks, but also people who've been around a long time and who we want to re-engage.
Just a comment on that, the hot garbage thing. I live with my parents, so when they get the mail sometimes I'll get it, sometimes they'll get it. When I get the mail, they don't throw away Libertarian Party stuff. Not because they know I'm a Libertarian, but because it doesn't look like hot garbage.
That's good. That's very good. Other questions? Yes, sir.
So, I ran for California State Assembly in 2018.
Thank you.
I did not make it past the open primary because, I didn't. So I was on our list of 800 something.
You were on our larger list that was almost 1,000 before.
Yeah. And Boomer actually had some of the same people that he used on Jeff Hewitt's helped get me on the ballot by collecting signatures.
Awesome.
So it's all good. But this is the question. It's just a big build up to the question. My district was 70% Spanish speaking, 20% Korean speaking, only 10% English speaking.
Wow.
That said, it was Koreatown,
Were you downtown LA,
East LA. Yeah, it was downtown, Huntington Park, East LA, and Koreatown. And I get it, half of them aren't citizens, but half of them are citizens. I had a really hard time finding literature that I could share with people that was in Spanish or Korean. I get it, at the National Party, you probably don't care about Korean, that's unique to my district. But 13% of the country is Spanish speaking, 10% of Utah is Spanish speaking, and you have 20 different things on the LP store that I can get in English and one thing that I can get in Spanish.
It's currently one.
So what kind of resources are available, or do you plan to make resources available for Spanish outreach?
So staff is wanting very much to make that happen, and a variety of materials that are presented in a way that are pleasing and that would hopefully be tested with the market group basically that we're going after. Right now, money and time are what's holding us up on that. To be frank, we have some bills we have to pay off from 2017, or not 2017, 2018. Yes, 2018. And so we're working to get caught up on that. And then we've got to get some things done that are currently high priorities set by the LNC. But if we had more money in the bank, I can fully imagine us going after more Spanish materials in the near future.
So the other thing, I mean, other than tasking Jeff when he's not running Riverside County to write some Spanish literature for us, not accidentally use the word for penis.
Or on purpose.
Or on purpose. It's one of the things that I've seen that's worked well in other parties, and that I think we should try and systematize into the Libertarian Party, is it's not so much in other parties, but it's definitely in other campaigns, national campaigns, is you mobilize and empower affinity groups. So if you looked at the Obama campaign was especially good at it, Clinton campaign was okay at it, Trump campaign was terrible at it, although they won anyway. You would have Korean Americans for Obama. You would have Latinos for Obama. You would have these things, you know, si se puede is, it helps to have a phrase that translates really well into Spanish. And that sort of thinking about that ahead of time. But what they would do is they would find these people who are engaged in their community who share our values, give them titles, because titles don't take any money away from me paying bills. I can give titles out like candy. And then make them head of that group, and then there's a volunteer or a semi-volunteer effort where, you know, we provide some resources, but they tailor messaging that works for their community, and we're facilitating it and putting a stamp of official, like, approval on it. And Lauren did this early on. We had a gentleman who was living overseas, I think in Germany. He was in Germany. And he said, you know, the Democrats have Democrats abroad and the Republicans have Republicans abroad. Is there libertarians abroad? And Lauren sends me an email and said, is there libertarians abroad? I said, I don't know. I don't think so. And he said, well, I'd really like to have that because there's a lot of expats and they get hit by the banking regulations that make it hard as an American to put any money in any foreign bank because our government is terrible. And so we made him head of Libertarians Abroad became a thing. And then he was the head of Libertarians Abroad. And then he was the one saying, these are issues we need to talk about. These are positions we need to take. These are people we need to go and look at. This is a German language magazine that, you know, is interested in the Libertarian Party. Like, we were getting opportunities from that. And it's about empowering others to kind of take what they're passionate about and make it part of the larger movement. So that's probably the best way to, if you run again, that's the way to do it. Is find some libertarians in Koreatown, find some libertarians who speak Spanish fluently and are Latino, get them involved in your campaign to develop literature for your campaign so that then they're more authentically going out there and introducing you as the candidate, and then you get some of that, you know, shine off of them. It's very synergistic. So I want to do more of that. Because it's something we can do without spending a lot of money. It's just a matter of empowering others.
In downtown Salt Lake, I believe it is, what was the statistic? What?
23%.
Yeah, 23
to 2015.
Yeah, 23% Hispanic speaking. Yeah, and we were just, you know, again, wondering about materials we could use. It would be really nice to have a database of even if it was just the text and you didn't provide any graphics or anything for us, would be greatly appreciated, because we could take that text and, you know, if you put it side by side with English, we can go like, you know, it might be broken English because you're translating word for word or whatever, but we might be able to copy and paste that into our own materials and have our own proofreaders look at it.
You know, if you don't mind, we haven't done the forensics yet totally on our campaign, but, you know, the two cities that we did the best in were the two that had the highest percentage of Spanish speakers. And and we did spend some money. Boomer, do you remember how much we spent on the 30-second radio ads on the biggest?
Okay, Buena?
Yeah, Cape Buena.
It was $2,000 and $5,000.
So about $7,000 on radio ads that meant a big deal. We won that city by 3,400 and 2,000 votes and stuff. And they said,
Also targeted Spanish language mailers, targeted Democratic mailers talking about Latino issues.
exactly. And then I went to large, September 16th, Mexican Independence Day, 4,000 Hispanics with huge, and so I think what Justin said, and that's what I was thinking too, if we can come up with something that'd be very cost effective, that's a resource at national, that comes up with just covering some of our basic platform points and stuff, then we send them out to you guys can print or whatever on a particular, and you have something, because that translating into it was pretty good. Even though I speak Spanish fairly well, okay, so even though I think I speak Spanish fairly well.
Hold up, can we check that? She gave him a still. So we're good.
We could probably make that.
Yeah.
Do you mind, can I just say on that for Utah?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, because
But then Dan wants to ask a
I'm gonna be
question.
very
eventually.
quick.
Okay.
For each state, I think it's important because the biggest number of, and I think Julie's been very involved in the Republican Party with me as well in the past. So Utah, the Spanish speakers tend to be converts. So I think it's important that national producing a Spanish language mass-produced mailer is not going to be effective in Utah because the majority of our Spanish speakers are LDS converts. So they want to see a different message.
They want to see, as Kath Benson said this.
Correct. So they're not going to want to see what National's producing on a wide run. Texas Spanish speakers are not Utah Spanish speakers. They're just not. So I think that it's important that while it's important for National to produce things, I think that National needs it. Utah's very different than Texas.
And that goes back to empowering people in your community, because the closer they are to the community, the better they understand those issues. Dan, you've been waiting to ask a question.
Yes, thank you. On the subject actually related to producing this kind of campaign assistance tools, when I was on the LNC, Bill Winter produced several packages. Each one was on an issue. There was Project Healthy Choice, Operation Safe Streets, and so on. There were a few of them, and I got the impression from the people in my region that they were what was wanted, and they were very well received. There has been nothing like that since. Is there any consideration of that? Has there been any kind of discussion of what that was by anybody who remembers, and possibly retracing and reconstituting and going beyond that initial effort?
So there's two different pieces there. So one would be talking points.
Yes,
and
that was definitely part of it.
That is a high priority for this year, to produce talking points, probably written largely by Paolo over here, that are broken down by issue and meant for candidates and activists to be able to use them to communicate effectively. Another option is more of the activist kind of kit or project. We saw over this past several days the park cleanup efforts. For those who aren't familiar with it, as you know, the national government has been shut down, and
not enough of it. But
not vacuuming the forest.
Right, shut down is a relative term, but many parks were not getting cleaned up, so some libertarians have been organizing to help clean up parks. This was spurred on by Jess Mears taking this idea and fanning the flames, and all of these activists went out and made it happen, and we've gotten some really fabulous earned media from this. So this is an example for staff where we have been talking about, okay, what other activist projects can we put out there? Maybe they're timely around tax day, maybe they have some other theme, but we provide the tools for the activists, and we say, hey, here's a sample press kit, that's based on that specific issue. Here's the talking points. for your activists. Here's the other materials you'll need, making it super easy for them. So I think that probably is similar to what you're...
Is there anyone at HU who actually knows what was done 30 years ago?
Yes.
Thanks to our historical.
Thanks to the Historical Preservation Committee, we know a lot. And if you really want to know what was done 30 years ago, Joe will show you to his archive upstairs,
I see.
which he has pretty much all that stuff. But to get back down to it, one of the things that I wanted to do during the 2018 cycle that was not, we just didn't get done, was I wanted there to be a Chinese menu of about 20 issues that libertarian candidates have the best position on, where at the national level we would develop both a policy white paper with facts, figures, statistics, all the reasons why we're right, talking points, infographics, all of those things that we would then make available through our campaign support staff to candidates, so that if you're running in Utah and the big issues are pension debt and religious freedom and guns because of your district, we've got white papers and talking points on those three things where you can be the smartest guy in the room on that issue. We've handed those tools to you. You just have to go out and deliver the lines. That's what we did in Colorado. Is anything you can do to reduce the barrier for a candidate for running for office, reduce that fear factor, is good. We filled out all the paperwork for them. We would take care of all the paperwork, get stuff signed, get stuff notarized, say, look, we'll take care of the paperwork. And we had a volunteer team that if you stepped up to run for office, if you weren't comfortable answering a survey, we had volunteers who would answer that survey for you, send it back to you, put your name on the bottom of it. We're set. If we can do that and scale it up, I think that makes all of our candidates, one, they'll all be speaking with a similar voice, if not the same one. We'll be hitting the same policy points across the country. But if we're doing it in that organic way, it won't look as hokey and nationalized like the Contract with America did. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious what the Libertarian Party is going to do with election fraud, because I was personally involved when they tested electronics, and you voted for one and it absolutely went to another one, even though it gave you a paper trail. Because they never read the paper trail, they just read the software. So the election fraud, the software for elections is developed in Washington, and they send it out to all the states and they control it. And I think there's election fraud, it's major, but no one really pays attention to it, and they all believe in it so much. And I lost my faith in it when I personally experienced the test that failed. And they says, oh, don't worry, we'll send it back and get it fixed, and it'll be. And I'm thinking, BS. So, what's the Libertarian? Do they know about this? Or are you putting into any ideas to have a different type of voting that eliminates creating the software? Because if you create the software, you can control who's going to win, and you can show that it was fair.
Right.
And it wasn't.
So the biggest thing with that is it's not something the National Party can really do much about, because it changes from state to state and jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Different states and localities use different election methods. So a lot of local or state parties are pushing back on a particular kind of balloting. I know that North Carolina isn't going to seat one of their congressmen because of some old school election fraud, where you instead just go get the ballots from a retirement home, fill them all out for yourself, and then turn them in.
55?
Huh?
Wyoming 55?
And then there's the occasional state house district in which they find 500 ballots right after somebody wins, like you do. So it's not an electronic thing. It's different in each different jurisdiction, so we have to pay attention to it. But one of the things when we pay attention to it, I want to make sure we don't lose sight of where we're at. So in my home county, there are some activists who were so passionate about making sure that we had libertarians who would be election monitors at the polls, watching to make sure that no shenanigans happened. but we didn't have volunteers at the polls handing out literature for my mayoral race at every precinct.
Well,
So that's kind of a cart before the horse issue. So yes, election fraud is very important, but I think more of our efforts need to be focused on just getting some more votes. And then we'll get to the point where, when we're in Bethany's case and it's like a razor thin margin, that's when we have to watch the fraud side of it. Right now, we're still just trying to get the percentages up.
Well, and I'll speak to it from my own race for Justice of the Peace in Waco, Texas this year. So I had my campaign team go through training on the election system, election integrity, and so on. And then we looked for the right opportunity because we didn't want to have that problem. We needed our volunteers out on election day doing all the things we needed them to do. So we looked for where the system was most vulnerable and where 2 poll watchers could have the biggest impact. And then we had one really devoted volunteer, and then I hired a lawyer to be the other poll watcher to go watch the central counting station. And they sat there all day long without leaving at all to watch, because that was the place where it was easiest with our system for somebody to come in and pull the shenanigans.
Was it electronic?
It was, yes. But
I will watch electronic. If you can't go to the source, the program source, and see it, you can't watch electronic.
I understand it's not perfect, but here's the thing. By doing this, we learned a lot about the system. And by doing this, I have this lawyer who is now somewhat trained on this system and has built relationships with people in the elections office, and who will be even more useful next time. So this is not a problem we can tackle all at once, right? We have to go, we have to do things, learn about the system, take that, do more next time, and so on and so forth to build out our expertise. Because we aren't experts on this yet, but we have to start where we can. So I was very pleased with how it turned out with my campaign. I'm well aware that it's not a perfect solution because there are all these pieces, but it's a step in the right direction, and we'll continue that with the next round of elections next year.
Do you mind if I just?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Very quickly.
So I will be very quick. So on that note on the lawyers, in Wyoming, when we called the county clerk's office, their response was, in 40 years, we have never had a person request to be a poll watcher. The laws were archaic, they didn't know. The county clerks, we called the state, Secretary of State, they didn't know. Nobody knew in Wyoming because there's so little competition. So that's something, I think this is actually a good sign because the Libertarian Party is reaching to the point where they're actually competitive in these places, that they can actually be aware of where the problems are. We're seeing the rifts, and we can start being prepared. If we have a lawyer in the room, we could say, no, Julie Freeze can't count those votes alone. She needs to have people to watch her. The county clerk in Bethany's race counted those votes alone. And we could have said, no, you can't do that.
Well,
But we didn't have a lawyer there.
They can't throw away the votes, though.
They didn't throw away the
They
votes,
are
they found
counting.
500.
No, they didn't
Oh.
throw any.
Fair enough.
It's not less, it's more.
So I think it's a good thing. So on your point, do I think it's super widespread? I don't know. But do I think it's existent? Yes, and I think that it's important that we're finding those flaws.
And learning the laws that we can use to our benefit. So for example, we learned that the county chair can appoint additional poll watchers
Right.
that can come from a different part of the county than the precinct all these little details
We're learning.
that really do matter when you're trying to execute a plan and you have limited resources to do it with. So this is a task for all of us all across the country to be working on it.
The Hewitt campaign was able to secure funding to pay someone for our month-long counting process, to go into the ballot, to go in there every single day, meet with those people, learn that process, expose themselves with the registrar of voters process, and wrote a white paper on that process and where it was broken for the campaign. So we were going to be able to share with other people in our county and then spread throughout the rest of the state. I think that it's more of a campaign responsibility than a party responsibility. Because it is so individualized, but it's not difficult. It's not difficult to do, and I understand your concerns about the electronic voting. But for right now, we just need to be able to have a presence so that we're watching and really put those guys on notice. Because for a long time, they've been running amok.
So just really quickly, the lawyer that we contacted in the Bethany Valdez campaign, I contacted the lawyer the day of. We contacted 2 lawyers. Bethany spent, which is more than the average Libertarian rate, she spent about $7,000. The Libertarian lawyer that we contacted asked the two of them, one quoted as $3,500, one quoted as $4,000. So the costs of this comes back to, we need your donations.
Or people to volunteer who are lawyers,
Right.
which
There
is
you go.
Why do they
last
have
question,
to be
sir.
lawyers?
Yeah, why?
Huh?
Why do they have to be lawyers?
They don't have to be lawyers. It's helpful to
Yeah.
be a lawyer for some things, very little.
Less arguments.
It's helpful once you're into the point where you're challenging or dealing with a statute, because they spend 3 to 4 years of beating it into your head how to read statutes. So it's like it's a little bit of knowing the language, but no, poll watchers don't have to be lawyers. You don't have to be a lawyer to challenge this stuff. And really, what you need in a campaign, and this is a thing for candidates who are going to run, line up your volunteers not only to run for the office, but to like swing through the ball. To be volunteers to go and challenge things. Yes.
And another problem that I see for the Libertarian Party in the state of Utah is the Desert News and Solid Tribune. Now, I personally know that both newspapers, they have a committee and they endorse candidates. And they promote the candidate that they endorse. If they never choose a Libertarian candidate, the Libertarian Party will never ever receive the kind of coverage that's needed to help build it. So you got a problem with the Desert News and the Solid Tribune on that. Do you know about that, and how would you tackle that?
Well, I don't know the specific things with the Desert News and the Salt Lake Tribune, but what I do know is that around the country, more and more of our candidates are getting editorial board interviews where even if they're not being selected as the candidate that they're choosing to endorse, they are getting to the table to present their views. And with the advent of the internet, a lot of those editorial board interviews are live streamed. So a lot of their readers or viewers are seeing our candidates giving the answers to the editorial board, and some of them are deciding that they like those answers better than the editorial board did, and so they're going to support our candidates.
So I had an interview with the Deseret News editorial board in 2017. And it was a fantastic experience, but I wouldn't have got that if I hadn't asked for it. They don't know to go find a libertarian and have them come be interviewed. They would see that as a waste of time. Libertarian candidates who aren't knocking on the door aren't ones that are politically interested in. The other thing I want to share very quickly is it's going on midnight in Washington, D.C. right now, and our National Executive Director left to come here at what is 2 a.m. Salt Lake City time.
Question.
Oh, that was the last question. So I'm the one eating up time.
Oh wait, no! Oh, sorry, we got one more.
And you're looking.
All right, you have the
Keep
last
that
one.
Thank you so much. So
No, that was the last.
Lifelong Republican, but the Republican Party is so broken. This feels so good to me. So I'm looking for literature, and I've read your platform, but some history about Utah. If you would ask 8 out of 10 people in Utah if they're pro-life or what their feelings are about abortion, 8 out of 10 people will tell you they're pro-life. And they continue to elect politicians that fund abortion by regulating it, making laws so they can make money off of it, really. Last year a bill was passed, it's called the Pain Capable Child Act, and it really broke my heart, but it allows now a baby to be aborted at 20 weeks, only they require anesthesia, so the baby is out of pain. And anyway, so I would just love to understand your talking points. I know I don't know a lot about the views, but could you tell me the talking points on abortion?
Sure. So we are the only political party left in the country that doesn't close our doors to anybody based on their views on the abortion issue. The Republicans have long since eliminated anyone who is pro-choice from their party, and the Democrats have long since eliminated anyone who is pro-life from their party. The Libertarian platform recognizes that issue is it engenders very strong feelings. There are good faith reasons why people come down on both sides of that issue based on real, genuine beliefs about, whose rights matter. Because it becomes an issue of you have the mother's rights and you have the unborn child's rights. And when you have a conflict, those conflicts can be resolved differently based on where different people's philosophy is. So our party does not take a position one way or the other on the issue of abortion. What we do take a position on is the one thing that everyone in our party agrees on, because there's both a pro-life caucus and a pro-choice caucus within the Libertarian Party. But the one thing that's in our platform is what everyone in the party agrees on, which is the government shouldn't be involved. Neither taking your money to do something that's pro-abortion, nor getting in between a woman and her doctor with regulation or some law or something like that. On a personal note, one of the things that is most, I guess, sad for me is watching what happens in this country where two old political parties that agree on almost everything that's bad with this country, from excessive spending to sending our children overseas to die in other countries, civil wars, to engaging in every aspect of our personal lives, disagree about something that's so galvanizing as abortion, but is probably the issue that is the farthest away from ever getting any legislation to move the needle one way or the other in this country. They drum up emotion from people to get them to fight each other and distract them from the fact that they're killing the country by making them look over here at this one thing that, if you watch what politicians do and not listen to what they say, because any politician will tell you saying nice things is the price of admission, but you watch how they vote, not a single Republican at any level has done anything that's actually changed abortion policy. Not a judge that's been appointed has done anything that's changed abortion policy. They need the controversy, but they have no interest in changing the issue. And so it's hard to do, but one of the things that I have tried to do is I try not to judge my politicians based on their beliefs on an issue that I know they're not going to do anything about. If they like chocolate ice cream better than vanilla ice cream, but I know there's no chance of there being a national ice cream law, then I don't care. I care about whether or not they're going to spend more of my money than the other guy. And that's hard to do because it is a very emotional issue. But I think that our party has one of the more mature ways to look at the issue. It doesn't satisfy everybody, but I think that it's honest. And I don't think the old ones are.
And that's why you're serving a third term this year.
That's exactly right, because if the government weren't funding abortion, that would cut it immediately.
Right.
I mean, I just read a report, New York City last year reported 49,000 reported pregnancies, and of those 49% were births and the rest were aborted.
Right.
So 51% of the
They
babies
weren't just lost. Because there's a lot of
There's something called natural
loss.
Yeah, I believe it was pretty close to that.
But one of the other things for people who are very passionate about that issue is you can have a lot more effect, and this is something that libertarians would encourage you to do that Republicans and Democrats will not. You have a lot more effect going out and working with a nonprofit or working in the community to try and get to some of those root causes outside of the government, leaving the government aside because they're not really good at anything else, so why would they be good at this? You can have a lot more positive impact that way by not trying to let politicians be involved in that issue. That is a great question. I really appreciate it, and I thank you for coming out and seeing what we're all about. And I think that's a great way for us to end our evening. And thank you again for the hospitality, Jeff.
Y'all don't have to go home. It gets here before.
Of the Libertarian Party, the Utah Libertarian Party, I'd like to present you with a shirt.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yes, you are.
We all distracted.
No worries.
Change it out for size.